Good evening. This is the Tuesday, December 14th public safety meeting. It is approximately 6:40. I am the chair, Dan Bresnahan. To my right is City Councilor at Large, Mike Sullivan, and Ward 4 City Councilor Josie Valentina. I take a motion to take item number 1 off the table.
Second.
Order from Tom McGee that the Planning Department provide the Public Safety Committee an update with regard to 160 Water Street. I have a correspondence from Marcos Marrero that I will read into the record and pass it around. As requested, I've provided a written update for the 160 Middle Water Street. This property has been abandoned for 21 years since a fire consumed most of the building in 1996. The city foreclosed on the property for back taxes in '99. Through the EPA and Mass Development funding, the city performed environmental analysis, cleanup, and some selective demolition between 2000 and 2009. Full demolition and site cleanup was estimated at over $500,000, which we have reason to believe would be significantly more today. This property is located in a somewhat secluded industrial area of the city in the third-level canal in the Connecticut River. Throughout the year, city staff from multiple departments, including OPED, fire, and police, have responded to numerous complaints and site safety issues. Staff has worked with abutters, United Paper Box, and Sunoco to facilitate a redevelopment project at the site, but improving site conditions has been cost prohibitive. 160 Middle Water Street was included in Area 10 of Holyoke's Urban Renewal Plan upon its approval by the city in late 2012. Following the plan, Office of Economic Development requested and received City Council's approval to transfer the site control of the property to the Holyoke Redevelopment Authority in August 2016. The Redevelopment Authority made public the intent to sell the property, reached out to the abutters to gauge interest. A proposal for development was presented and accepted by Western Mass Demolition Corporation this year to acquire the property for $1. The purchase and sale agreement was signed and approved by Mass Department of Housing and Community Development. The company is now in its formal due diligence period and is expected to close the sale by February 2018. Western Mass Demolition Company will first perform the demolition and cleanup activities required for the reuse. Their plan is to construct a building and use the site as its Holyoke base as well for its regional operations. The company also has a facility in Westfield. It is important to note that while the initial transaction of $1 reflects the high cost of remediating the site, the agreement carries with its resale provision whereby if a sale is made over the next 10 years, a portion of the sale proceeds would go to HRA. The agreement also carries with it the standard revisionary interest of 2 years if the project goals are not properly pursued within that period of time. I trust this information addresses the inquiry. If I can be of any further assistance, please don't hesitate to call me, Marcus Marrero. So I would give that order's been complied with. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Make a motion to take item 2 off the table.
So moved.
Order from Councilor Vacon that a hearing be set to review and reduce traffic cutting through Sunset and Ashley neighborhood and what improvements could be made to reduce the safety hazards, such as changing traffic lights, making streets one-way, and creating cul-de-sacs, etc. Councilor Vacon from Ward 5 is here. My apologies for not introducing you earlier.
Oh, no problem.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been an ongoing problem up there shortly after that new road was opened and the smart light was put in so that when people cut through the neighborhood, they'd get to the red light and it would automatically trigger it to turn green. So the people cutting through are actually getting rewarded for that, whereas the people staying on the main roads were getting caught in the queue and backed up down to Homestead, which one of the whole purposes of adding that road was to take traffic off of Homestead that was theoretically coming from Westfield and hopefully returning back to Westfield. So over time, because of people getting frustrated waiting for the lights, etc., the cutting through has become increasingly problematic and more well-known also. So I've been talking to a number of the neighbors, and in the early days when the road was first going in and we were meeting up at HCC, they had said that they were willing to participate in mitigation efforts should problems arise in the neighborhood because the neighbors were up there expressing these exact concerns. Since then, I've spoken to different people in the neighborhood and given out speed hump applications, et cetera. But it seems that the problem is really more complex than that. And so I was hoping if we had more minds brought to the matter, maybe some different recommendations could be brought to bear, you know, such as a couple of them that I listed and maybe some that I didn't, so that maybe we could come up with a better result than we might otherwise.
Now, so if they're coming down Homestead Road from the mall, so to speak, and they're taking a left right there
At 202.
at 202.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So because they get frustrated, backed up into traffic, they start cutting up Clayton and the other side streets there, and then cutting over through Ashley and Sunset. So most recently, we made a no left turn onto 202 off of Ashley, but it's really just a Band-Aid. Right. And I mean, I see people taking lefts out of the Westfield Dunkin' Donuts that says no left turn all the time. You know, so I mean, all these efforts are only as good as the people will honor them in terms of things like that. So it seems like there's a more comprehensive approach needed. So I was hoping, and he may just come in later, Mike.
No,
Yeah.
right. My hope is that he is right here.
Yay! We just said your name and magically you appeared.
Why don't you come on right out, Mike? We'll put our arms around this and see what you think. Now, Mike's basically DPW director and city engineer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I think Ryan may have reached out to somebody up at HCC too, but I'm not positive, but but I really think Mike's probably the best one to speak to it mostly. This is the Clayton Road, Ashley Sunset neighborhood problem, you know, with all the things we've been batting around. Right. And we have one representative from the neighborhood here, should
I will say that when you had your community forum, there was more than one. There was, the whole room was full of people concerned
Yes.
about that cut through, and I was there. They were
Yes.
very passionate about it. So it's
I
not,
think there's been a bit of a chilling effect
oh no,
tonight,
I
if you
agree.
will,
I agree.
because it's so cold.
So cold outside.
I think people haven't come down. Just literally, yeah.
You were talking about one-ways and cul-de-sacs.
I mean, whatever, you know what I mean? Because all I've basically been doing is passing out speed hump applications, and that really doesn't seem to be the answer. So we were hoping you might have a...
And is the cut-through, is it in one direction, or is it?
If it's the...
Off, yeah. Right. Okay, you just work through
I'm
it.
a musician, but I don't have, it's not my equipment. I don't want to fix it.
Is it traffic one way?
It's both ways.
It's both ways.
I would say I've probably heard more complaints about the evening commute with the people zipping to get across 202 to 202, heading to Westfield.
Okay.
And that's, you know, when there's more kids coming and going back and forth from school and the like. So I've probably heard more complaints in that direction than the other.
In the evening.
The morning and the evening, but I think more the complaint is going toward Westfield.
So there are things where you could have like one-way traffic during certain times of the day. Because what you really want to do is force the cars to use the main roads. One way would be to improve the efficiency of that intersection at Stead and Westfield.
With the blinking yellow?
Well, I thought that was up by Doyle.
No, that's right at Homestead and 202 near.
Oh, with the blinking yellow.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, with something along those lines.
I did file an order for that too. But we were more interested to hear, instead of me coming up with all these ideas and putting them one at a time, we thought if we were
Yeah.
able to take a more comprehensive approach, it might turn out better.
And I've been talking with a traffic engineer friend of mine about this, and he had a couple ideas about widening up the turn coming from Westfield Road onto Homestead.
That little cut through?
Yeah,
Or
what
the
we call
whole-
the slip lane,
Yeah, yeah.
where you're taking a right. And what he's noticed is that there's not enough of a queue length for,
Right, only about 4 cars.
yeah, but also if you want to go straight through
Right.
Westfield, where it's almost like a single lane, and some people are bearing right onto Homestead. And what happens is the traffic signal, it sees that there's not a demand for people to continue on Westfield, so it times out. That happens, you'll have people who get stopped at a red light, which causes a backup. So if there was 2 lanes of traffic there, one right turn, it would improve the congestion.
As far as going into Holyoke.
Coming into Holyoke, yeah. And then having the flashing yellow turn from Homestead onto Westfield to go up the mountain would improve the congestion in the
Right, and
evening.
reduce that frustration along the Homestead corridor.
Right.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, we would need to we'd need to reconfigure the geometry of that intersection, which would require design, it would require right-of-way takings.
Oh, so it's not just a matter of changing the light?
It's not a matter of changing the light. It would be a bigger project. But that type of project, while it's a bigger project, like $1.5 million to $2 million, because of the impacts that it would have on congestion, would be something that could be funded through the TIP program by the state.
Because they just did that intersection not too long ago.
But even when they did it, demographics are still changing in the area.
True.
And if we did a traffic study now, we'd probably see that there's more cars today than there was 5 years ago.
Out of Westfield, because Westfield's growing a lot. So could you talk, if it's all right, Mr. Chair?
Of course,
Could you talk a little bit more about the one-way?
Yeah, so if we did something on Sunset and Ashley, where they were one way towards Westfield Road, 7 and 9 a.m., and one way going away from Westfield Road, 3 to 6 p.m. That would be against the flow of the cut-through traffic.
Right.
That's just signage, right, Mike?
That would be signage, yeah.
Well, except that you would change the way the light functions also at Doyle, so that there would be no green light coming out of Sunset when it was one way, the other way.
Right.
Right?
And then I think changing the signal pattern at the intersection in Doyle, we would need the state's approval, since they're the ones that put in that signal. I'm not saying it can't be done, but we wouldn't be able to have Joe go out there tomorrow
Just
and
adjust
flip a
it.
couple switches.
Yeah, because right now it seems like the people cutting through are getting rewarded for cutting through because it trips the light to green.
Okay.
If I'm understanding how it's working correctly. Yeah. So, you speed through the people's yards, you get to the light, and lovely, it turns green for you.
So, Mike, just from what I'm gathering real quick here, we make it a one-way, certain hours, no matter what we do, that fixes the problem for the neighbors, for the neighborhood, or might help with it. But it's just going to force all these vehicles back to where they should be, which is going to be an even more congested intersection. It sounds already like we're heading in the right direction. We got to get something going with the state and get this. Things have changed, or it was ill-configured to begin with. One or the other, take your choice. But it sounds like that's the only way to go, long term, to solve the problem.
It'll probably take 3 to 5 years for that to happen that way. The TIF list is usually long.
It is long, but sometimes if you have a project that's designed and ready to go, you can slip it in if another project isn't ready to go. And then sometimes like the high-end Maple Street project with the intersections, while it's being funded through the TIP, it's not being funded in the regional planning portion of the TIP.
Oh, okay.
It's funded with separate money.
That's quicker.
It's quicker, and it's also not competing with other cities and towns who need money for their own infrastructure improvements. So if this project could be billed as congestion mitigation only, and not because of regular maintenance improvements, we might be able to get it outside of that regional planning tip.
Would it be helpful if HCC was supporting and acknowledging the need for the mitigation?
That would be, the more proponents you have, the better.
Because in the earlier meetings before the light was even there and the road was even built, they did agree to participate in mitigation efforts, or at least, actions if they were needed, because the neighbors were worried about that. Reasonably so. But can I just ask one more question? So on the idea of the cul-de-sacs, is that sort of ruled out of hand, not a good idea? At one point, I had heard a discussion that if you closed off Sunset and Ashley at 202, it could be constructed in a way that if a fire truck had to get in there, they could still get over, what the curb or the construction that would effectively close the road to regular traffic, but it wouldn't close it to emergency vehicles if it was needed. And then the other thing is all the emergency vehicles now, fire and ambulance, in I would say almost all cases, are going to go up those side streets because they'd be going a longer distance to go out, take a left on 202 and come back down Sunset or Ashley to get into that neighborhood.
So you're saying you would turn the portion of Sunset and Ashley where it meets 202 into a cul-de-sac?
Yeah.
To essentially dead end them?
Right, so then it would be like a Blueberry Hill, no outlet.
Yeah.
But you'd still be able to get in and out of the neighborhood through 2 or 3 different roads. 3.
Right, ultimately using Homestead.
Yes.
I would think the biggest concern would be emergency response.
Right, but I think they're all going up the side streets because it's a closer access to the houses up there to go up the side streets from Homestead and South Street, which is where ambulance and fire are coming from, to go into that neighborhood. I mean, I don't think you're going to go up the 202 hill into Sunset if you can go up, what is that one? Pigeon? Aren't they going to go up Pigeon? Yeah.
Right.
They're going to go up Pigeon. They're not going to fight the light and the 202 intersection, I don't think.
No, I would agree with you.
So if we could address those concerns, I'm just trying to see if it's a valid.
It is, and it is on, like Seattle. They have neighborhoods that are grid patterns, and what they've done is set up dead ends where they'll block off the grid, so that you can't just zip through from one end to the other on one street. You almost have to drive around, which slows traffic down. So something like that, blocking off the end of the road, would stop the cut-throughs, which is the ultimate goal, to increase safety.
Would that be something literally all the neighbors would have to agree to have it happen? I mean, is that,
I don't know.
would it be sort of like a speed hump? You got to have a supermajority of the homeowners?
Yeah, I'm not sure the legality of.
It seems the cheapest option, though, and that you don't have to I mean, basically, you're just going to put a curb up at the end of Ashley and Sunset,
I mean,
put some 8 feet of grass.
Drop a Jersey barrier at the end of the road.
But I mean, eventually, we would probably pull the Jersey barrier out of there. After,
No, yeah.
Right, okay, just to make it aesthetically pleasing or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, that seems we don't have to contact the state.
Right.
But I mean, obviously, whether or not we would need the neighborhood's approval, that's.
We'd have to figure that out through
So
legal,
we'd need
Yeah.
to
What-
check with the legal.
what the process would be.
Yeah.
But my understanding also is rather than using Jersey barriers, there's certain construction that can be used that does not allow average vehicles to travel through, but if an emergency vehicle did, say there had to be a mutual aid response, and so there's people coming from Westfield and Holyoke, and they need to get through, that the end of that cul-de-sac at 202 could be created in a way that a fire truck could get through it. They're not so robust, like if you put a Jersey barrier there, nothing's getting through
Right,
it.
and
But-
I was joking about the.
Oh,
I know.
Sorry.
Dan wasn't, but Mike was. But, that would be the kind of thing I'd advocate for, so that in a dire emergency, if people had to get in always, they still could, but for normal traffic flow, they couldn't.
Yeah, and like even speed humps. Some speed humps are designed so that the wheelbase of the fire truck doesn't hit the speed hump, but a normal car, truck, the wheelbase would hit at least a portion of the speed hump. So yeah, that's something we could also look at. Preserve the mutual aid access, like you were saying.
If it is the will of the committee, we have one representative from the neighborhood. Just in case I didn't cover anything, if you want to add any particular details, you just have to go up to the mic, give your name and address, just in case you have some other details that I might not have.
There you go.
Judy Selesky. I live at 23 Clayton Road. The biggest concern that I want to stress is there are a lot of limited site areas in this neighborhood. There is one sign directly opposite my house that is posted as such. All of this traffic going through, going up hills and around curves, speed is an issue, but it's not the only issue. It's just the sheer volume. There are people who don't even want to be home between the hours of 3 and 6 o'clock because the number of cars going through. We park on the street. You've got cars coming in both directions, trying to get past cars that are parked on the street. The worst time, as Linda has said, for the traffic going from Homestead Avenue to 202, it starts anywhere from 2:30 on till 6 o'clock. No one in our neighborhood needs a clock. You know what time it is. Unfortunately, what's happening is people know about it, and now they're cutting through all the time. The vast majority of the problem, though, is 2:30 to 6. And I know one resident at your last meeting, Linda, at Mrs. Mitchell's Kitchen, and commented about the traffic in the morning coming from Westfield to Homestead Avenue. Since he said that, I've noticed the amount of traffic that comes in. When traffic comes through my neighborhood in the afternoon, I can stand in my driveway and look down the street, and there is a stream coming up Clayton Road from Homestead Avenue. There's a stream that goes across Sterling Road that's heading towards Ashley to get out. I live on a corner with O'Connell Road. The traffic is coming in Sterling, up O'Connell Road, and then out Clayton. So I can stand in my driveway, and to me, it's like ants going to cookie crumbs. They're just coming from every direction. And then they're also coming down the hill to go, because the traffic is too backed up at Homestead and 202. So they're cutting through to get out towards the mall. Something I understand and appreciate that all kinds of studies need to get done and funding needs to get found. But Linda knocked on my door over 2.5 years ago and said she was there because people had been complaining about the traffic. We've finally gotten you guys listening now. We can't wait years for something to get done. This traffic has to get addressed somehow. Signs mean nothing. Every entrance to the neighborhood has a local traffic only sign. Nobody reads it, nobody does anything. We need something done, and we need it done quickly. We need it done sooner rather than later. Redoing intersections, great, but we can't wait 3 years for that to happen.
So they're cutting from Homestead, I just want to be clear, basically getting to Westfield.
Correct.
I mean, I got to tell you, I think the cheapest way around this is to rip up the gravel and put some curbs in. No traffic studies, no nothing. I mean, we might not be able to do it now just because of the weather, but, I mean, and I'm not, Mike knows it better than I, but, I mean, it just seems that if we put some curbs up, ripped up the pavement, put some grass seed in, you know, no one, I mean, but I mean, not logically, people are not going to drive through 8 feet of grass and go up and over a curb. I mean, state involved, we don't have to do traffic studies, we don't have to do any of that.
That would be what I would love, but the problem is when you check with legal, how many people on those streets, on those sections of the streets, have to say yes?
Well, I don't even know if any of them do, if it's a safety issue or whatever, but it's something to investigate further. But I was hoping to come out of here tonight with like 1, 2, 3. 1 would be the best, least expensive option. 2 would be da-da-da-da, and then I can get back to the neighborhood and even go around, petitions can go around, you know, and people can weigh in. I think the biggest concern I've heard about closing the roads was the access of the emergency vehicles. So if they knew it was constructed in a way that the average car can't go over, but the average fire truck can, then I think people would be all right with it. That's their main concern, yeah. Is there a traffic counter, you know, like the little piece of rubber that goes across the road to get a number of cars that are cutting through? I mean, do we have one of those?
Yeah, the police have one, DPW has one.
Does it take an act of God to get one set up maybe, just to get a sense of how much?
No, and we can do it. I think right now it's on Washington.
Right, and that doesn't disturb traffic because you just basically roll like you're going over a garden hose.
No, what we have is it's a box that uses radar, so it's mounted on a telephone pole.
Just for data that we can justify cutting off streets.
Yeah, we can do that, and it doesn't take any time to put it up, and it's just battery operated and collects data.
So it sounds like the best and cheapest is to so to speak, make them cul-de-sacs.
Or a dead end.
Or a dead end.
Dead end would be the cheapest.
Dead end
would be right.
Yeah.
Anyways, and then this choice 2 is basically to start playing with traffic lights in that venue.
Well, I think that would be even number 4 would be the
6.
traffic
I think it's
lights.
6.
The cul-de-sacs are nicer because you can turn around. The other option was limiting the flow of traffic during certain times.
Oh, the
of day.
one way.
Yeah. But again, it's whether or not people pay attention to the sign.
Right. The thing is that the ultimate way to stop this is to not make them throughways anymore.
Right.
That's that, I mean, I think that's the
Yeah.
best thing to do. I think we table this maybe, and, we can go, we table it, we get an answer from law department within the next week about, do we need anybody's okay?
So you guys can refer it to legal to
Yeah.
get some feedback?
And then.
Cool.
Then we, whoever can start asking neighbors, this is what the game plan is. If 90% of the people hate the idea, that's gonna be a
Then
problem.
yeah.
No, I'm sure, I
No,
know. I'm just
yeah, you
saying,
know how it goes, but I just think it's very helpful to have you have looked at it. We're having a discussion about what the various options are and what could be done most quickly, most cost effectively, and then we'll get out and petition the neighborhood, and this is very helpful. I really appreciate you coming down and the committee taking it up, and hopefully we can move on something no later than the spring, at least on one item.
So should I, go ahead, Jill.
No, I was just going to say that, does it make more sense for Mike to actually follow up with legal? Because if the answer is, it's kind of like a dead end, no pun intended, then the communication can go back in terms of plan B or, I
I want to table it anyways, and then me and Mike, I'll email Paul from the law department, and,
Okay.
we can CC you in on it, and we'll go, and obviously you, Linda, and us, and we can go from there.
Yeah, Mike, so we're zeroing in on a short-term solution. Is there something we need to do on the long-term solution here as far as getting the ball rolling on getting the state funding or the state involved with redoing the intersection?
Yeah, and that process would be getting a design completed for the intersection. So we can pay for that design through the Chapter 90 money.
Do we have to get another order going, or?
No, I am moving that forward.
Oh, great.
And it, one thing we're thinking is the corridor, not just at that intersection, but also from Lower Westfield Road up to Westfield Road along Homestead, because there is a lot of congestion there. See cars backed up, especially at the evening commute.
I know I was there myself tonight.
Oh, can I just put in a plug that if they are improving that intersection, that they add in the technology that allows the light to change when the fire alarm comes in?
Yeah, that's no matter what. That's
Because
gotta be
that would be huge.
a motion to table this order to allow for follow-up?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much on this.
Accept the motion to take item 3 off the table.
So moved.
Item 3 is also an order from Councilor Vacon that asks, order that the guardrails be installed on Route 202 near the entrance to Ashley Reservoir and across the street from the entrance due to ongoing safety issues.
I would just say that thanks to the vigilance and the summer help at the reservoir that the water department brought in, the parking issues were improved greatly, but intermittent. It's like when the attention is being paid, it was better. As soon as something lightens up, it's back. So the thought at the time that I filed this was that if the guardrails were there, it wouldn't necessitate the constant vigilance around enforcing the no parking, because then there physically wouldn't be enough room for the no parking, and it would also increase the safety of the people that are walking in the area, and now all the cars coming out of Doyle as well. I don't know if it's warranted, but that was the thinking behind the order.
So these would be guardrails along Route 202.
Right, you know
Just
how they
to-
come down all the way, but then they stop?
Yeah.
It would just be to kind of finish them.
So it would be to prevent parking on the
Prevent
shoulder.
parking and prevent the cars from exiting the road, and
But I think if it's within the public right-of-way, the city can put up guardrails. If it's on the water department's land.
it's on 202 itself.
So then I need to get a price to figure out how much it would cost to have guardrails put in, and then find the money and get it.
Do you feel that it's warranted? Do you feel it's a reasonable thing, or that it's not really needed?
I'm not totally familiar with how bad the parking is. So I'm taking your word that it is bad and
Well,
creates a safety issue.
Well, it was really, really bad until they started enforcing it this summer, and they actually put staff up there. 202 was like a parking lot, and people were walking across it like they were in a parking lot.
Okay.
It was that bad. Then when they brought the people in and there was a little more enforcement, it diminished quite a bit. It did push a lot of people up near the Elks, so there's always an effect and then another effect. But it did improve, but it will require constant vigilance.
Would the waterworks budget maybe have a little bit more flow than your
They don't.
budget? They don't?
No,
Well,
they
that's what they
used,
say.
they used a person through the tax work-off that was down there, in the peak time, and it really was effective, but you have to have somebody there. That helped with the parking, which then you didn't have to rely on the police so much to enforce the parking.
So you're saying basically coming down 202 from Westfield, they park on the right-hand side.
Both sides. Both sides. They park underneath the no parking sign.
Because obviously that entrance to the gate is just packed.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's gotten more and more popular. There's been more and more events there, so it's more well-known. The irony is most of the people going there that are parking like that aren't even from Holyoke.
I wonder if they could push the gates into that entrance, knock them down and push them closer in.
To set up more parking.
More parking, that sounds like that.
Because you got that short little patch, and they take down the gates, put them 30 feet in, because it's offline. We're not drinking that water. It's a reserve in case we
To
ever
reserve,
need.
yeah.
But
I'm not sure they want more parking, but
I don't think they want any.
it's a lot for them to manage the enforcement of the rules in the reservoir. The people with the dogs and the fishing. I'm not sure. They're very warm to people being in there and walking and utilizing it, but they're having a real struggle having compliance. So I can't speak for them on that, but I have, heard some discussion in that regard. But it's a question. It's reasonable. There's a lot of parking up at the Elks. They don't seem to mind people parking up there.
Probably because some people go inside afterwards.
Well, hey, perhaps. But there is a lot of parking up there.
So do you want us to table it and have them get a price on the guardrails, or do you want to even go up there and see what you think?
I'll take a drive by and look
imagine
at it,
what
but
is
I'll
it-
get a price for the guardrails.
Right, so it's probably Saturdays and Sundays where it's crazily parked.
The weekends are bigger, but any day it's a warm, nice, a good walking day is a big day. Some are bigger than others, but
Table?
Second?
I appreciate you looking into that,
All in
Mike.
favor?
Aye.
All right.
We should take item 4 off the table. Item 4 is an order from Todd McGee, order that the DPW and the fire department provide different bonding options for replacing, repairing the traffic lights, crosswalks in the city. Options should be provided as soon as possible.
So Joe O'Connor and I have been working with two vendors, the two vendors that he uses whenever anybody hits a traffic light to repair them, to come up with a cost estimate for 12 intersections in the city to replace the equipment. So we have old equipment. The lights need to be upgraded, the pedestrian lights and push buttons need to be upgraded. And with that, we need new control boxes which have the computer that runs the lights. We've talked with the state, and the state's okay with us changing out the equipment and the lights, provided we don't do anything to the cycle times and that we don't do anything to the geometry of the intersection. So if we're just replacing equipment, that's fine. So Joe and I have been working with these two vendors to come up with a price for each one of the intersections. We just got the prices for different types of controllers and everything. So now we're developing a cost estimate for each intersection. And it's going to range from about $100,000 to $150,000 per intersection, depending on whether or not we need a new mast arm, which is what holds the light, or if we can reuse the existing poles and mast arms. So the way we're looking at this project is we've got one contractor who would be kind of the electrician and site contractor. Another one would provide the equipment, and then DPW would be there for any support if conduit needed to be installed or other construction-related work, a concrete pad or something like that, and a sidewalk. So we just got the prices today, and then we just need to come up with our estimate for each intersection.
Now that money's coming from us, right? There's no
Correct.
funding,
Yeah.
some funding source anywhere else. It's just coming out of the city's coffers.
Right.
Okay.
Unless we wanted to wait 3 to 5 years. But I think with that, if we were to go to the state, then we would need to reevaluate the geometry. We'd need to have somebody look at the traffic and do a signal warrant analysis to maybe change the length of a green light for one direction. It becomes a bigger project.
So the state oversees traffic lights, so to speak?
There's some traffic lights they do and some they don't. If they ever pay for any improvements at an intersection, then from then on, their approval is required before we make any changes.
You said there's a total of about 12 intersections that are would you say desperate need?
Yeah, desperate need.
Counselor Valentin?
Is this separate than the 10 intersections that we have heard about several times?
It's those 10 plus 2 more.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Vacon?
Is one of the 202?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Which one at 202? The one at 202?
And Apremont Highway.
Got to do something to stop the NASCAR racetrack. It's insane.
So the order, in my opinion, has been complied with. But so you're working with the
Yeah, we're going to come up
vendors,
with
trying to get a price.
We're going to come up with a number, and then we're going to go to you guys and request a bond to pay for it. And once that gets approved, we'll order the equipment and schedule the construction. I think this order was also in the Finance Committee, and we met with them 2 weeks ago. I think they said it was complied with pending we submit the total cost.
Comply with?
Oh, yep.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Order number 5 is an order from various amounts of counselors, but because the only one here, I will say it's Counselor Valentin, that says the City of Holyoke make a major push towards recycling in public areas. All parks have containers, school playgrounds, fields have containers. Any store that requests a DPW container provide one, and they be located at entrance to promote recycling. What do you want Mike have at it?
Just, self-explanatory, just trying to continue to push our motivation for folks to recycle.
Okay. Yeah, and we're on board and talking with the other people at DPW. They've said we've tried this before. They put recycling bins out at parks, and people just wind up throwing their trash and dirty diapers and other rubbish in the recycling bin. And as soon as they do that, we pretty much have to chuck everything into the refuse. So it's no longer recycling. But that was probably a couple years ago, and I'm willing to try it again. I know there were some recycling containers at certain parks this fall during the soccer season. I know Jones Point had 2 of the larger wheeled bins for recycling, and I checked it, and there was only recycling. There were bottles and glass bottles and plastic bottles in the containers. So it's worth a shot. And if, I mean, we can promote recycling, that's great.
Bottle or only fit, I mean, they could fit anything in there if they wanted to, but I mean,
Right.
something along those lines.
We could look into those. With businesses, we've been trying to provide businesses that ask for trash cans in front of their stores, trash cans. And again, in talking with the people at DPW, they said we did that in the past, and people would fill up the trash can with their household rubbish. And then it became excessive for DPW staff to go and collect it. So the agreement we have with businesses is that we provide the container outside their storefront as long as they agree to maintain the trash inside and dispose of it. And, they're usually willing to do that, to try to curb littering around their businesses. But recycling containers, we do provide recycling containers to businesses or blocks that request recycling containers.
I don't remember. Do you know?
I think everybody has to recycle, no matter what. Yeah.
So we provide the containers for free.
We do, yeah.
Now, if I go down there as a homeowner, it's $5 to get one, right? The small little bins.
Well, I think we give 1 or 2 free. Like if you're a new homeowner in the area, we give you 1 or 2. If yours gets broken, you bring the broken one back and we swap it out.
We don't have any of those wheeled ones that we're selling.
No, they come and then they immediately go.
Right. Now, the markings on the 2-wheeled totes, 55 gallons or whatever they are, 35 gallons, the city doesn't care if it says, waste management, Chicopee, Holyoke. I mean, they're gonna empty it if it's used as a recycling bin, or does it have to be blue? Does it have to say Holyoke?
It doesn't have to, and we let people use regular garbage cans as long as they're identified as recycling. The city council, I think, just approved the revolving fund for the larger tote purchases. So we'll have up to $15,000 a year to buy those larger totes, and that should get us around 170, 180.
Now, did you say 15,000?
Per year, yeah, that was.
Now, was that just a number pulled out of the recycling bin, or I have to imagine that we make more than 15,000 in recycling a year.
I think last year we made 22, and if we go back 5 years, we made 80. So it's
say 80. I'm sorry.
80,000. Yeah.
And why would you see a decrease from 80 to 22?
Recycling is a commodity, so it's the plastic value is based on oil prices. So as oil goes down, the value of the plastic recycling goes down. And then also a lot of communities are now recycling more, like Springfield and Chicopee. So since there's more recyclables in the market, that also drives the price down. But you also have to look at recycling as reducing the amount of trash that we dispose of. So even though we're getting less per ton of recyclables, every ton that we recycle is one less ton that we have to pay for at about $90 a ton.
Counselor Vacon?
The 15,000 was a compromise. We had started out at 25, and there was some pushback that 25 was too much to be tying up in a revolving fund. So then we came back with the refile for the 15.
The only maker of the order.
There were like 7 of us.
Like 10 of you.
Yeah, okay. Just checking. I wasn't the original author. I signed on. I did a Anthony Soto move. So I'm fine with saying it's been complied with, knowing that the staff will look into it.
Your second on the motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Chair, could
Sure.
I take item 10 out of order, which is the one order that I have here? I didn't realize it was just going to be the 3 of us, and I actually have to leave in like 5 minutes, which, do we have the quorum rule in place where,
We adopted it yet, did we?
I'm trying to remember.
Didn't.
I think we took that up at the Charter and
But it
Rules
hasn't come
meeting.
before the full council.
So if I have to
Are you
leave,
here for an
there's
order
no-
though, Dio?
Well, he has an order here.
Or the chief, I was just gonna table it until, and I was actually gonna put it to exactly what you're looking for. The email you sent to me was much more direct.
All right, so if we could take item 10 out of order?
Sure. Item 10 reads from Councilor Valentin, our current illegal dumping ordinances be reviewed to determine ways in which the city can enforce them with more success. In addition, the possibility of installing video cameras in alley hotspots is explored as a way to curb illegal dumping.
So basically, no secret that this is a huge issue in Ward 4 because of the alleys, and so I actually think this is a typo. I don't think it's 10-6-17. It may actually be 10-6-16 because it's been an ongoing conversation. But we had the conversation before with like Board of Health and the police, and so I guess I just wanted to take advantage of the fact that Mike is here and see if there's thoughts around this, because it continues to be an ongoing issue.
It is something that we talk about at the problem property group meetings. And I think these cameras are CDBG eligible for purchase. So it's one of the things that internally in the city that we've been talking about, using CDBG funds in the next round to purchase and deploy. It's just finding the right person who's currently on city staff to monitor and watch and then try to enforce the dumping. So it's something that we are working on. And then with the cleanup, DPW does some cleanup, but we also have groups like the Sheriff's Department and ROCA who go through and pick it up after it's been dumped.
Is there
If
a
we
cost
can-
associated with those? I mean, I know ROCA, you got to pay to play with them, don't you?
Yeah, but they also have grants to help offset the costs. And whenever we can, we do try to go back on the dumper. It's obvious like it's coming from one person's house.
Yep. So, Mike, I know we put up some signs to inform people about the anti-dumping ordinance we have now with these $5,000 fines. I've seen one sign. Can you tell us where the other ones are?
On purpose, they don't tell us where they are, so or where there could be cameras.
No, these are,
know-
these are actual
just
signs
signs.
warning people.
They were supposed to be at the entrances into the city, right? I thought we were having one coming in from Chicopee and one coming in from South Hadley.
Okay, I've seen one at the bottom of Appleton Street so far. I haven't seen any other ones.
Okay.
We'll find out about, some of the effectiveness. The cameras, I'd like to say are a great idea. DEP did come in and put up some cameras about a year ago, and the places where they put them up, people spot them real quick, and in those particular areas, it stopped immediately. Those cameras have since been removed, and lo and behold, there's sofas and mattresses back there again.
Right.
The cameras at one of the private business owners, I don't feel right saying who right now, but they'll be testing this in court this coming Tuesday. They've actually got them pulling up on camera, on video, with a U-Haul, and dumping 50 tires right in front of Western Mass Elder Care. So I can't speak strongly of this. Number one, how effective the cameras could become if we can get these in place.
The public way.
So
Right.
Private cameras?
these were private cameras that got this one, but as you can see, it'll work. Now we'll see what happens when they go to court and face a $5,000 fine.
And the
I know
cameras
they
are-
won't get 5,000, but just the price of disposing of 50 tires at is $10 each. That should be a minimum of 500 right there. It's at the discretion of the judge, and we'll see what happens.
These cameras are essentially deer cameras,
Yes,
too. They're not hardwired to anything.
and they're fairly inexpensive. I
Yeah.
think, we can buy them right at any sporting goods store.
I have to go through purchasing.
Right.
That's a perfect segue to my question. If the committee could broaden the order of the makers to include the next worst dumping areas, which are the country roads. People drive down Appermont, Mountain, Southampton, they find a nice little dirt road, drive in a few hundred yards and dump all kinds of stuff. And I'm not saying CDBG might not apply, but if there was an opportunity and it's cheaper if you're buying 20 of them to buy a few more that could go up in those hot spots, if the committee was willing to entertain broadening that to include, because there's some known dumping areas out there too, I would be grateful.
As the maker of the order, I mean, I don't mind. I think that the wording that I used of that our current illegal dumping ordinances be reviewed
Yeah.
to determine ways. I mean, I think that could be broad enough so that the conversation can be, more inclusive. I mean, it doesn't say Ward 4, it just says, it talks about the alleys.
Right.
But
The country alleys,
yeah.
we'll call them.
anything that's a hot spot, obviously. I mean, any eyesore in the city is an eyesore anywhere. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
So how do you want to move on this?
Well, maybe we should table it because it seems like there's some additional information that Mike could get back to us with. Does that sound fair, Mike?
Fine, yeah.
Okay, so a motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Should we take the ones that we know we need to table because the police department's not here? I'm looking at 11, 12, 13. Those are all kind of police department.
Well, I've got the information from the police department, and I'd like to get a letter read into the record.
Into the record and just
Okay.
comply with them. It won't take.
So do you want to go back to regular order, or, because the next one was yours, which was 6, and that was DPW with a sign, but that might be
Yeah,
easy
I mean-
enough for Mike. So
6 and
motion
7.
to take 6 and 7, because they're both signs, as a package and take them off the table.
Second.
Aye.
Mike Kennyfield,
We can do it. We'll
Okay.
put a sign up and
Now, we can still do it, even though we don't have to do it today, but I'm still, the frost doesn't matter because we got the thing, you jam it down in the ground, right?
Right.
Okay. So I'll say the order's complied with and soccer will be safer this summer or spring because of
Yeah.
you.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Right?
So that's 6 for Kenny Field, right? That one's also
Yeah, and then 7 is Lincoln Street.
in Hampton.
Put a larger sign for your turn signal. When we can too.
So complied with, motion to has been complied with.
Favor?
Aye. Motion to take 8 off the table. Do you want to go in that order, Mr. Chairman? The DPW also,
We're gonna table that. Actually, Dave did respond.
with the dead trees.
Yeah. Thoughts on that? That's not the one.
So for 8, John Tuig's the city forester, but he's also the Parks Department superintendent. And we've come up with a thing recently where on Tuesdays, he focuses his attention on trees. We're either trimming trees that have dead branches that need to be removed or taking down trees that need to come down. And then the city has a stump grinder for grinding the stumps. But we're limiting it to Tuesdays so that he doesn't get overwhelmed with that and then lose sight of all of the other maintenance that the Parks Department has to do. The city did approve a tree climber position, a new position in the fiscal year 18 budget. We advertised in early July, but we didn't get any applications until just recently. So next week, Wednesday and Thursday, we'll be interviewing 3 candidates, and hopefully we'll be able to hire somebody who will be able to focus all of their attention on removing and pruning trees, and also doing the stump grinding. And then if there is a tree that's too large for the city to handle, we have a little bit of money with Asplund to take the trees down. We have a contract with them that was, they bid on the contract 2 years ago. So it's a 3-year contract. We're in the second year of that contract. But I know
We only call them in if it's beyond what we can do.
if it's beyond what we can do, yeah. We're hopeful that this additional tree climber, we can start to really address the trees. Because I know there is a lot of frustration out there with people who have dead trees in front of their house that are hazard trees, and they want it taken down, but we just don't have the internal resources to do it. And with Asplund, I think we had them for about 3 or 4 weeks worth of work last year. So when you can do a tree a day for them, or a day and a half, you don't really get too far.
That's been complied with.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
The maker of item number 9 has asked that we table that. So,
Motion to table.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I will tell you, though, that's been going on for a while, so next time
Yeah.
Joe will probably be here, and he'll probably want answers, but I don't want to get into great detail on that. 11 off the table.
So moved.
Okay, item number 11 is that the Holyoke PD do a detailed list of all crimes in the past 12 months between 1056, 1057 Main Street to 1125 Main Street, 350 Ingleside to 370 Ingleside. Some streets, Jones Ferry, Oscar Street, Arthur, St. Vincent, Pelletier. Residents in this neighborhood would like to know what the crime data is for these streets. Thanks, Mike.
Bye, Mike.
This is from the chief of the police. City Councilor Roman ordered that the police department provide a list of crimes in the areas as I already spoke to. Please provide the data. I received this request on September 14th, 2007. and he pulled the data from September 14th, 2016 until September 14th, 2017. There was 6 arrests in this area, ranging from warrant served to cruelty to animals to 2 assault and batteries on domestics. Other related crimes, there was 4 breaking and enterings, an assault, a larceny, and a trespass. So there's a total of 13 crimes, 6 arrests in a year's time from September 14th, 2016 until September 14th, 2017. Provide that in writing to the maker of the order, but as it reads.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion to take item 12 off the table.
Second.
Item 12 we're going to table because they did not respond.
Motion
Maker
to
of
table
orders.
item 12. Councilor Lopez.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Motion to take item 13 off the table.
Item number 13 is from Councilor Sullivan, order that the Holyoke Police Department use their authority under Massachusetts General Law, Part 1, Title 27, Chapter 123, Section 35, to protect any person who has lost the power of self-control and is dangerously injuring their own health. This law allows for the commitment of any individual to a public or private facility by the court for care and treatment after a hearing.
Okay, thank you. So, I had first a preliminary meeting with the police department and the chief and Captain Duguay, and one of the concerns that they had was that it's quite a process to go through, and they felt that quite often the courts weren't receptive to it, and it was very difficult to achieve. And then there was also some questions about the effectiveness of it also. And by the effectiveness of it, I mean them going through all the work of doing this to try and get some help for the person, and then finding the person back out on the street 3 days later. So we followed up with a meeting with Sheriff Kochi out at the Ludlow facility, and we learned there right now when somebody is Section 35, pretty much they're held over the weekend either here in Holyoke or out in Ludlow, and then sent off to the eastern end of the state. At that point, we lose complete track of what happens to the person, and they may be out there for 5 days, 10 days, 20 days. They're put on a bus back here. Nobody's informed that they're coming back, and they're found back out on the street again. And that's the next we see of them. In most cases, the program is not successful. Now, having said that, 2 counties, I believe it's Essex County is one of them, have instituted a new program, and they are enjoying a 30% success rate. As you know, I'm not exaggerating, as a 1 in 100 shot around here. So Sheriff Kochi is trying to expand the program that they have in Ludlow and have the counselors, the program that people are not in a general prison population. It's very similar to the alcohol 3-time conviction kind of program, and it's very much based on it's a comprehensive program with follow-up outside of the terms, which can potentially run up to 90 days in this program. But he doesn't have the funding yet available to have this available to us here in Hampden County. He has gotten support from the other counties to have a regional facility where it would also work for Hampshire and Berkshire County as well. And so we now have also in front of the council, I believe right now it's in DGR, it'll probably come out next week, just a motion to go forward with a letter of support and urging Aaron Vega and Don Humison to support getting the necessary funding to improve the program at Ludlow. So we went one step further, and we also met with Maureen Walsh, who's the presiding justice here at the Holyoke District Court, to get her input as far as the effectiveness of the program. And I don't want to read the whole letter, but or should I? Didn't read the whole letter. So she responded, and this is in response to the feeling that when they went through this process, there wasn't enough people actually being admitted. And we found out that that wasn't true either. It wasn't a waste of time. The waste of time comes later on in the process with them not getting the service that they need. But as far as the effectiveness of them being able to go through the court system, it reads, thank you for arranging the meeting between yourself, Captain Duguay, myself, and the chief. As we discussed in our meeting, the civil commitment to those who have alcohol and or substance use disorders is on the rise. The heroin epidemic certainly appears to be the prevalent reason for commitment. Despite the legislative changes to the existing statute to expand the time of commitment treatment up to 90 days, the average length of stay at the facility is 20 days. The need for treatment beds statewide is an issue with which we all struggle. So she's pretty much confirming what we've learned here from Sheriff Kochi as well. After our meeting, I had the opportunity to review some recent statistics from the Holyoke District Court relative to Section 35. In Q1 of 2017, 19 petitions were granted and 5 denied. Q2, 26 petitions granted, 2 denied. And finally, Q3 resulted in 18 hearings granted and 3 denied. Over the last 3 quarters, roughly 86% of Section 35s with respondents present have resulted in commitment. As I stated at the meeting, I share the many concerns about the effect of addiction in our community and the need for treatment. I continue to be impressed by the manner in which the Holyoke Police Department responds to the needs of its citizens in this as well as many other areas. At this meeting, the issue was raised about the panhandlers in the city, many of whom suffer from the disease of addiction. Without prejudging any particular set of facts before me, the civil commitment process is not one that will address the issues of panhandlers in the city. While many panhandlers have substance use disorder or alcohol use disorders, by law, the court will require evidence that the individual is a harm to himself or others. Without such evidence, a commitment would not be appropriate. And as we discussed, the burden of proof requires clear and convincing evidence that the respondent suffers from addiction and there is a serious likelihood of harm due to the disorder. Simply put, the fact that an individual is drug-dependent person does not result in commitment under Mass General Law, Chapter 123, Section 35. I appreciate the time to talk with you and quality of life impact in Holyoke. I'm certainly open to further discussions. Sincerely, Maureen Walsh.
So as a alcohol and drug counselor for many years, and also the person who ran the psych unit at the Ludlow jail, seeing a lot of these cases, yeah, I mean the way the law is designed, it's the same as when there's mental health issues, and for that one it's a Section 12, where it really has to be. I mean, Linda knows as a nurse too. It really has to be that the person is putting their lives or others at risk. And so, you know, I do know that there's a challenge overall in terms of substance abuse programs because funding is, you know, continuously challenging and programs are cut. And so what we end up seeing is that, you know, the emergency rooms become detoxes, the jails become detoxes, and that's not, you know, what this is designed for. So I appreciate, you know, you reaching out to the different players. I think it's helpful information for the community to know about. You know, in terms of the Holyoke Police Department, I mean, I'm assuming they're looking at, you know, whatever they can enforce with the limitations that we have, but I think it's a helpful discussion to have in terms of obviously the intensity of the problem, but the fact that the law is very specific.
Yep. So if there's nothing, I'd make a motion the order's been complied with.
So moved. Aye.
Right?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Good night.